Welcome back, welcome back. Welcome back again. I love talking about this amazing body that we've been given. And I think it's a tragedy that so many people are not well. I think it's a tragedy that it's probably one of the most neglected forms of education is knowing about the human body. In the first lecture, we went way down into the very nucleus of the cell, where we looked at the DNA, we looked at the DNA's role in the running of the human body, and also the DNA's role in disease. We looked at how genetics loads the gun, but it is lifestyle that pulls the trigger. What role do these microbes play in the gastrointestinal tract? They are responsible for the final breakdown of our food. These microbes are responsible for the absorption of our food. You see, our gastrointestinal tract is a very interesting part of the body because it's a hollow tube. And anything that goes in there is not part of you or me till it gets broken down to tiny substances and then absorbed into the blood. Then it becomes part of you and me. The Bible says the life of the flesh is in the blood. The blood is the carrier. The blood carries all the nutrients to the inside workings of the cell. That's why I call the inside workings of the cell, I call that the CBD, the central business district of the human body. Those microbes also protect. They play a role in protecting the blood, but those microbes play another role. They are responsible for nourishing the cells that line the gastrointestinal tract. Are you starting to see that rather than being the enemy, these microbes are an integral part of life on planet Earth? Those microbes are responsible for the final breakdown of our food, the absorption of our food, the protection of our blood against harmful pathogens for the nourishment of those cells. Hippocrates said, all disease begins in the gut. So these microbes aren't our enemies. If they are out of control, we have to ask, why are they there? And remember, they're just opportunist organisms. And I used to get bronchitis. And when I started coughing up any yellow lump, I would immediately think, I've got an infection. I must go to the doctor, and what would he give me? Antibiotics. This is the germ theory. It's so much easier to think a germ came in and caused what was happening in my lungs rather than too many late nights and not living right. Can you see it's not me, it's the germ. It's not me, it's my DNA. Let's have a look at what an antibiotic is. Notice what the word means. Anti means against. Biotic means life. Now, if we're living organisms, we have to get away from the kill mentality, because anything that has the ability to kill small organisms has the potential to kill the large. And what are we? We're the large. And on the plate of fruit there was a mouldy orange. Do you remember the story from school days? The mould dust came down, settled on his bacteria and killed it. Alexander called the mould penicillium. Alexander Fleming called the mould waste. Now the mould waste is more toxic than the mould. You see, that's the dust that came and landed on his bacteria. He called the mould waste penicillic acid. And penicillic acid is the penicillin that we know today. And penicillic acid, or penicillin, has saved the lives of probably millions. And it will continue. But we have a problem today, and that is the overuse of the antibiotic and the inability of the physician to ask why. So when I'm 19 and I go to the doctor, he should have said to me, are you having early nights? Are you drinking enough water? What are you doing? Now, if he'd done that to me, I probably would have got up and went, I'm going to find another doctor that's going to just write me a script. And And this is why Pasteur's theory was so much more popular than Antoine Béchamp. 6 times professor, this man. Because Antoine Béchamp said germs don't cause disease, they're the result. They're just opportunist organisms. Florence Nightingale cleaned up that hospital so much that there was nowhere for the bacteria to live. There was no food for it. And of that 1.5 million, 1,000 of these mould wastes are known to cause disease in mankind. The link between mould, fungus and disease today is big, to the point of linking it with cancer. I have a book in my library by an Italian oncologist named Dr. Tullio Simoncini, and the book's title is Cancer is a Fungus. That's pretty clear, isn't it? He's been getting 90% success rate by injecting straight into the cancer sodium bicarbonate solution. You see, cancer, fungus, love an acid environment. And sodium bicarbonate is your ultimate alkalizer. In fact, the lining of our stomach releases sodium bicarb, so that when the hydrochloric acid comes through the wall, if it does, it's neutralised so it won't eat the lining of our stomach. And our pancreas releases sodium bicarbonate, so that if there's still acid mixed with our food when it gets into our duodenum, the pancreas releases sodium bicarb to neutralise that. So it's a naturally occurring part of the body. But notice those two roles, it is used to alkalise, to neutralise. Now, the Department of Mycology is the department that studies mould. Myco is the medical term for a mould waste. So mycotoxin, basically mould waste. What's a toxin? It is a poison. Do you know the fumes coming off from these are pretty toxic? I think we know that, don't we? And I have written a book on this subject. It's called Self-Heal by Design, because I find that many people are unaware of these links. I probably spent nearly $5,000 getting my resource books because these people have done all the research, so I just quoted them in my book. There's a strong link between there. Some say, Barbara, you can't blame fungus for everything. Well, it certainly is a part of causing disease, but the question needs to be asked why it is there. It can be there for various reasons. When you realise it's an opportunist organism, when you realise that in the soil it breaks down the heavy metals and the minerals in the soil and makes them available for the plants. So if a person has mercury fillings in their mouth, can you see that can be a ground for fungus to be growing? If a person has had a lot of chemical exposure, that can be a ground for fungus to grow. If a person is eating a high sugar diet, that can be a ground. Can you see there are many areas? That's why the detective hat has to be put on. How can fungus get into the body? It can get in through 4 ways. Number 1, it can be breathed in. Never breathe in mould. If there is a mouldy orange in your fruit bowl, put the mask on, put the gloves on, or get tongs, pick it up. There's a toxic poison. Put it in a paper bag, screw it up. If you want to know how toxic mould is, do a Bible study on it. The King James Version calls mould leprosy. It says leprosy in the house, green and yellow streaks. What's green and yellow streaks? Have you ever seen the lentil stew in the back corner of the fridge that's got green and red streaks? Been there a bit too long. And how do you know it's been there too long? You open the fridge and what does your nose tell you? You see, you're the doctor, your nose will tell you. The Bible calls, in the King James Version, leprosy in the house, leprosy in the clothes, and leprosy on the skin. If you go to the New International Version, it's the same word. They've interpreted leprosy in the house as mildew, leprosy in the clothes, mildew, leprosy on the skin are infectious skin disease. But if you were to do the same interpretation, it should be mildew on the skin. Because it's the same word. But it's not technically. Right. So it has been medically proven, but very difficult for the pharmaceutical companies to acknowledge that, which play a large role in medicine. Because if cancer is a fungus, and if fungus plays a role in the majority of diseases, then medicine would have to acknowledge that some of their main medications are putting it into people. Antibiotics, how many people take an antibiotic and get a thrush? Because what's an antibiotic? It is waste. Do you know the human body can cope with 2 courses in a lifetime? A moment's silence for you to digest that one. Antibiotics, statin drugs are fungus-based. Your cortisones, contraceptive pill, all of these things are feeding or putting the fungus into the body. So then the $1 million question is, how do we get it out? First of all, 4 ways to get it in. Ingest it through medication or through food or through blue vein cheese. What's the blue in the blue vein cheese? It's mould. When I was a little girl and the bread was mouldy, Mum would say, don't worry about it, it's just penicillin. Well, it's actually not quite like that. So it can be ingested, it can be breathed in. If there's mould in your house, you've got to assess that. So you can ingest it, you can breathe it in, don't touch it. It can get through your skin. That's why you never pick up a mouldy orange. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. It'll get in. And sexually. Most sexually transmitted diseases have a fungus base. Now, the $1 million question is, how do we get it out of the body? You have a secret weapon. And it's a strong, potent fungal killer, and it's called hydrochloric acid. If a person's hydrochloric acid is strong, even if they were to eat mouldy bread, it would wipe it out. But most people don't have strong hydrochloric acid anymore because they stress all the time, that drops it. They drink lots of water with their meals, that washes it away. They're eating every couple of hours, that overworks it and exhausts it. Did you hear all that? How many Aussies get a tick for all of those? But let me show you how you can get this out of the body. Number 1, starve. What's fungus's yeast's favourite food? Sugar. We had a lady come to our health retreat. She rang me up last week. She said, you know, it's been 5 years. She came to our retreat, so it must have been 5 years ago. She said, I have 3 big tumours in my abdomen. She was, I think, early 60s or late 50s at the time. She said, the doctor said to me, you've got to start chemotherapy immediately. Do you know it's a gamble with chemo? They just hope that more of the cancer cells get killed than the good cells. It's... And I'm afraid the survival rate is not very good. If someone survives 5 years after cancer and they die 2 days later, they're considered a cure because they made 5 years. You've heard the old treatment. Treatment was successful, but the patient died. You know, there's a human being here. We've got to keep that. If the human body was designed to heal itself, what we need to do is understand how it works and how we can build up the body to do it. So Elizabeth, and she doesn't mind me using her name's Elizabeth Cott from Melbourne. She said, I didn't like what they told me. So she said, a friend of mine gave me a DVD of yours on how to conquer cancer. She booked into Misty Mountain Health Retreat. She came for 2 weeks. She went through the program, which I'm going to define as I go. She said to me, I'm a vegan, I'm a vegetarian, but she said, I think I've found out the cause. She said, I'm the pavlova maker for our church. She said, I make pavlovas this big and I put 16 cups of white sugar. Think of that next time you're offered a slice of pavlova. Knowledge is easy to him that understands. When I understand what sugar does, when I understand how much is in that, I say, oh, no, thank you. I'll enjoy the strawberries on top. So You've got to starve it. All sugar must stop. And what we did with Elizabeth was for 6 weeks, no fruit. One lady said, but fruit's good. I said, it's fantastic. But cancer cells consume glucose at 15 times the rate of any other cell. And as Doug Kaufman in his book, The Germ That Causes Cancer, he said when you deprive cancer cells of glucose, they self-destruct. So no fruit for 6 weeks, not forever. No fruit for 6 weeks. Very low carbohydrate, because many carbohydrates break down very quickly to sugar. Absolutely no wheat. It breaks down incredibly fast to sugar. Also, you have to check the house, that there's no mold in the house. And where does mold love to live? Warm, damp areas with no air in there. One of the ladies said, you've got to get out of that house. She said, oh, but the rent's so cheap. You've got to make a decision on these things. So what fungus loves is sugar, high sweet, other molds and yeast. So this means no peanut butter. If you're sad at the thought of that, try macadamia nut butter, try almond butter, try cashew butter. But mold grows very, very easily on peanuts. You see, they're not a nut, they're a legume. They grow in the ground. Number 2, so that's the first thing, starve the fungus. So what Elizabeth did, she went fruit-free for 6 weeks, no honeys, no sweeteners at all. She had a lot of vegetables. She had legumes every meal. She had nuts and seeds, lots of different vegetables, lots of different legumes, so you can have a nice variety. In fact, she's a beautiful cook, so she took her cooking skills from the pavlova to the legumes. In fact, she's Polish. She makes beautiful Polish food now, but instead of butter, she uses coconut oil or olive oil. And instead of cream, she uses coconut cream. So she's just replaced the not-so-goods with the really goods. And her food is amazing. God gave us taste buds for a reason. Food should taste fantastic, but it should be such that it's going to contribute to our healing. So Hippocrates' statement, let food be your medicine. And that's a very important part of it. Number 2, kill. I do think we've got to get away from the kill mentality, but there are herbs that will kill the fungus and won't kill you. In Psalm 104 verse 14, the Bible says that God gave herbs for the service of man. I love that verse. We're here to serve you. Where would you like us? Garlic is a potent fungal killer. Grapefruit seed extract, another strong one. Olive leaf extract. In my book, I give a whole list of all the herbs. And what Elizabeth did, every 2 weeks, she'd do another herb. The body gets used to things, so you keep changing the herbs that you do. Number 3, balance. Flood the gastrointestinal tract with the good guys. What are the good guys? There's your probiotic that line the gut. Probiotic means for life. And you can get some very nice vegetarian probiotics. So if someone comes to us wanting help with cancer, we'll put them on a double dose. Best time is 3/4 of an hour before breakfast, because it goes way down to the lining of the gut. If you take it with the meal, the hydrochloric acid can wipe it out a bit. We want it early to go down. Number 4, alkalize. Cancer loves acid, loves an acid environment. So how do you alkalize? You can go to YouTube, put Barbara O'Neill, YouTube, acid alkaline, and you'll get a 50-minute presentation on the acid alkaline foods. But basically, greens and vegetables are very alkalizing, and there are some legumes that are alkalizing. Now, when Elizabeth left us, she didn't have a big property and garden like ours to do that, and so she would just take green barley, so green drinks. We're actually making it impossible for cancer to survive in her body. Can you see how we're coming at it from the food, from the herbs, balancing the gut, alkalizing, so the sodium bicarbonate. The only time I would advocate drinking sodium bicarb is if the person had stomach cancer. And even then, you wouldn't drink it near the meal because you want a nice acid stomach to break your food down. So maybe just before bed or first thing in the morning, that's the only time I would advocate drinking it. She had a good kickstart with us. She had the green drinks, taken the probiotic, the different herbs. She was on the specific diet. By now, she's eating low GI fruits like Granny Smith apple, grapefruit, maybe some berries. She went back to the doctor, so this is 9 months later. He said, one of your tumours has gone. He said, it is totally gone. He said, I cannot understand it. By now, she's lost weight. She's in her new Pierre Cardin suits. She's off all her other medication for all the other bits and pieces. She said, I'm early 60s. I feel better than I felt when I was in my 40s. I read an interview of him, and the interviewer said, tell me about your cancer cure rate. He said it's like this. If a diabetic eats right, lives right, they can control their diabetes. He said it's the same with cancer. You see, the body can heal itself. Whereas if you give it the right conditions, she gave it the right conditions and she got the result. She said, the last time I went to see the doctor, the oncologist was there, the specialist was there, they can't understand. Some people, I find, they're held back by rotten teeth, by mercury, by root canal fillings, because what these are doing are causing a development of bacteria behind the tooth. Can you see why the detective hat has to be put on? There are so many different ways that they can affect. Number 5 is Ormus. Ormus is orbitally rearranged monoatomic elements. Now what Ormus is it's minerals that have been dropped out of seawater in a monoatomic form. And the research coming from America now shows that these minerals in their monoatomic form are able to heal DNA damage. So now we get back to what can heal the damage in the DNA, and that are these minerals. In his book, The Calcium Lie, Dr. Robert Thompson, basically his whole book is on minerals. And he suggests that to get your mineral content up, definitely organics, definitely dark greens, but to buy the Celtic salt, because the Celtic salt has 82 minerals in it. Seawater has 92 minerals. He says before every glass of water, put a crystal of Celtic salt on your tongue and drink that glass of water down. He said all that will do is replace the minerals from yesterday. So now we're getting back to the importance of minerals. But Ormus is minerals in a monoatomic form. So that's one step more, showing their ability to heal the DNA damage. So what we did with is Elizabeth, we started her on 5 drops in the morning of the Ormus. Every week, increase a drop. And at the 16th week, she was up to 16 drops, which is a teaspoon, and now she still takes that as a maintenance dose. Is it that simple? Do you know it is? And we have seen some incredible turnarounds, like Elizabeth's story. I'll tell you another story which is also very interesting. And this man's name was Alan, and he was in his mid-70s, and he said to me, because he came to do our program, he said, I have a cancer tumour on my liver. I also have some cysts on my liver. And so we put him on this program. I talked to him a few months later. I said, how are you going? How are you finding the diet? He said, I love it. I'm alive. 4 months later, he came to see me. He said, I used to drag myself out of bed in the morning. He said, now I leap out of bed. This guy's in his mid-70s. He was a vegetarian. He was a vegan. But you know what he loved? Peanut butter. You know what else he loved? Sugar. He loved sugar, biscuits. So the sugar and the wheats, I guess it's a similar thing to Elizabeth, where, you know, the sugar was feeding it. He said, a few amazing things are happening. He said, I've always had fungus toenails. They're growing through clear. He said, I've had a lump in my sternum for a while. He said, it's gone. He said, I had a lump in my testes. He said, it's gone. All these other things are clearing up. He said, it's like I've got a new lease on life. It's at this point most people are in danger because they feel they can just do whatever they want. Now this man stayed eating well, but he did some staining work in an old church, and it was very, very toxic, the stain that he used, and he went down very quickly. And when he rang me, unfortunately tumours had risen in his colon and it blocked up his colon, and unfortunately he did not live long after that. So it's a very sad story. One wonders if he'd still be with us if he hadn't been exposed to those strong chemicals in that stainer. When someone has a serious illness, it takes serious steps to turn it around. And even once it's turned around, they must now be cautious. So when someone rings me and they have cancer, this is what I say to them. I say to them, I have seen incredible turnarounds. In fact, some people that I wondered if they would make it have. Sometimes I've seen 3 months go into 6 years. And sometimes I've seen the last days made more comfortable. And we have had a few people that have passed. When they came to us, it was at quite a advanced stage. And sometimes in an advanced stage, it's very difficult for them to do everything you've got to do to get a turnaround. Now, with some women, especially with breast cancer, I'll put this added sideline onto it. With breast cancer, there's a definite hormonal imbalance there, because if there's not a hormonal imbalance, these growths cannot develop in the reproductive organs. So in that situation, and also men with prostate cancer, there needs to be a hormone balancing cream applied. And there is a cream called the Anna's Wild Yam Cream, and it will balance the hormones. If you put Barbara O'Neill hormones into YouTube, you can watch that lecture. And estrogen, the Cancer Foundation have issued a warning, estrogen is a known human carcinogen. So taking something like the Anna's Wild Yam Cream boosts progesterone, which gets estrogen down. And also with something like breast cancer, castor oil compresses. Castor oil penetrates very, very deep into the body, and wearing a castor oil compress can help to break up the tumour in the breast. So you can see with different types of cancer, there might be little bits of fine-tuning on special poultices or water treatments or herbs. But what I have shown you here is the basic guideline that we use to help people to conquer cancer. Because the human body was designed to heal itself, and it will if you give it the right conditions.